Welcome to New Game Plus. This is a retro gaming podcast where three guys spend 7 days playing one old game and then we talk about it. My name's Dustin.
My name's Kenny.
I'm Nolan.
And this is episode 20, and there's something special about this episode.
Tell me.
There's something different.
Kenny got a haircut.
Yeah, well, I mean, that is actually very exciting. But it's
not
something
true.
It's something, believe it, you don't have enough hair to cut.
Oh.
Don't tell people I'm
I actually
slightly
wasn't
balding.
going there, Dustin.
Yeah, that's rude.
Okay, you have so much hair to cut.
All right, get to our surprise.
Because it's actually something, believe it or not, that's much more exciting than Kenny's haircut. Today, on our 20th episode, we have our very first guest.
And?
Hello?
I thought you guys were going to cheer. Let's try that again.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. On our 20th episode, we have our very first guest.
Yeah.
Mysterious guest, would you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, I kind of spoiled the surprise a moment ago. Hi, I'm Gaming Jay, and I'm here to join you guys in your podcast today.
Yeah, we are so glad to have you. Let me get this straight. You have a YouTube channel where you upload Let's Plays, but you have a unique spin on your channel. Can you tell us about that? What are you doing that's different than what the others are doing?
So, a couple years ago, I got a book for Christmas, which people have, seen this in bookstores and around if you're into gaming, called 1001 Games You Must Play Before You Die. And it kind of goes through a whole bunch of retro games from the 70s and 80s and 90s. And I was leafing through the book one day, and I started to think that somebody should actually try this. I mean, the book's title is 1001 Games You Must Play Before You Die. And I looked around online and no one had been doing it. And I decided, you know what? I'm going to make this my mission. So I started a YouTube channel, started doing Let's Plays. And every week I worked through a couple of games in this book, trying to sort of hit that magical mark of 1001.
Wow.
That's pretty excellent. 1001's a high goal. How many in are you so far?
He's like 6.
I'll be 60 by the time this podcast comes out.
Oh, hey, it's a great start.
So
That's really good.
So I'm still kind of new at this game, but
kind of makes you wonder who wrote it and if they actually played all those games.
That is true.
Or if they died like 3 short.
It was probably a collaborative effort. It wasn't just one person, but many that got together and said, these games are great. They should be played.
Well, maybe Jay can write his own when he's done and say, you know what, this one shouldn't be on the list, or this one should be.
I say that the producers of that book should fund your efforts, Jay. So
yeah, for sure.
If there's someone we need to talk to, just let us know.
So I thought of sending them a note or something at some point, but I feel like 60 games, I might not be far enough in to convince them I'm going to stick with this, but who knows? Maybe down the line they might notice it.
Yeah,
and something might be able to something could happen.
Seriously, because I mean, I doubt that anyone's tried that before. People pick up that book, and I've definitely seen the book before, and people pick up that book and they'll find a game or two, or I mean even 10 games in there that are games that they're interested in playing, but no one, I don't think, sits down and has the idea that they're going to play through all 1001 of them.
Yeah, it's a pretty ludicrous idea, actually, when you think about it.
No, I think it's great. So you said that you played through 60, or when this podcast comes out, you'll have cleared 60?
Yeah, Contra 3 is my 60th game, actually.
Awesome. So you're actually beating them all, or you're just playing them?
I think I knew from the get-go that I wouldn't be able to beat every game,
right,
because some of them are really long games. Especially, I mean, the book goes all the way up to 2010. And so you'll have games like Red Dead Redemption, or Arkham City and stuff like that. Like games that are quite long.
Right.
So sort of my mentality is I'm here to play them and to try them and get a sense of the flavor of each game. And so I try and do that. And most of my videos range somewhere between half an hour to an hour. But there's some games that I really feel like even in an hour, you don't really get a sense of the game. So sometimes I make some multi-part videos and I'll go for 2 or sometimes 3 hours if I think the game needs it.
Yeah, I just saw that you uploaded your 3rd Max Payne video.
Yeah, so Max Payne I think is the longest game to date, although did play through Full Throttle, and that was a 3-parter as well. But even with Max Payne, I mean, I didn't, I maybe got like a 20% into the game or so. So to finish that one would be really hard to do. It would just take so much time. And really, when you're playing through 1001 games, you kind of have to manage your time.
Right.
So it's just not realistic, I think, to finish them all. So that's not what the channel's about. It's not about finishing the games necessarily.
Right. It's kind of like ours. Like our podcast is not about completing and conquering and mastering each and every game we play. It's about experiencing each one and getting a feel and a taste of the game.
Yep.
Okay, so last question before we move on to what we came here to do, because I am curious, what has been one of your favorite games so far out of those 60s, and what has been one of your least favorite games out of that 60?
That's a really good question. So I will say, as I've been playing these games, I've really noticed that what I used to think were my favorite games, I still really like, but there have been lots of gems that I have missed. Like, I consider myself a gamer. And, like I played like all the big ones like Halo and Uncharted and those types of things. But in going through this book, 1001 Games, I'm playing a bunch of games that like I may have heard of a little bit, but I didn't know too much about. And I've actually found that a lot of these games are far more fun than I would have ever given them credit for. And so one that stands out in my head is Mario Golf for Game Boy. It is just a little throwaway game, and I'm not a golfer, I'm not a sports guy, so I assumed I wouldn't enjoy the game. But it was such a like tightly polished game. I mean, Nintendo always has usually very polished games, but the gameplay was actually, it was more strategic than I thought it would be. It was a bit more challenging in the skill, and they had this whole RPG element. You could explore a town, this little golf resort, and there was a whole side thing that I didn't really even do much in the video, but I saw it was there, and it kind of really made it feel like a really fleshed out world, which was cool.
Interesting.
Nolan's downloading it already, I can tell.
Yeah. Looking through your list, I would not have guessed that you would have said Mario Golf.
Mario Golf?
Yeah.
It's amazing which games surprise you. I've had a number of those as we've played through our catalog. Yeah,
and I think that's part of the experience of playing through a lot of these old retro games and picking ones that you don't necessarily think are the best of the best, because I mean there's so many more games out there than just the sort of most popular ones that people know about, and there's lots of surprising gameplay moments in a lot of these old games.
Right.
The one that I that I had the least fun playing, it probably Summer Games 2 on the Commodore 64, because I couldn't even get that game to run properly. So I don't know if you guys have ever tried a Commodore 64 game before.
I feel like one of ours has, but it had a port, luckily, that we were able to play on something else.
Yeah, I don't have a Commodore at the house, but Kenny might have played one when he was a teenager.
Listen, that might be true.
If you are going to try a Commodore 64 game, I have learned always go with the port if you can. Because if you actually try and run something on a Commodore 64, even an emulator, these games used to take anywhere from like 10 to 15 minutes to load a level. Like, it was unbelievable. Wow.
That's incredible.
People would like throw in tapes, and it would take like 10 minutes to load a level. And then by the time you play it, it's a game from the 80s, so it doesn't have the best controls. There's usually no explanation of what to do. And that was one of my early videos when I was a little naive about some of these really old systems. And it's basically just a video of me ranting about how I can't believe I can't get this game to work.
Yeah. No, that's great. Now we know which 2 videos that we need to watch for entertainment value. So no, that's great. Well, let's do what we came here to do. Every episode of New Game Plus, we discuss our experiences with an old game that we played the week before, and you actually this week, Jay, selected our game, and it was Contra 3. So Kenny, how about you kind of just like share with us an overview of Contra 3, and then we'll be able to talk a little bit further about it.
Yeah, Contra 3 is a game that was published by Konami, like everything apparently in that era. At least a lot of the popular things.
Everything good.
And everything good. I'm kind of finding that, or at least not completely disagreeing with that sentiment. And it came out on Super Nintendo. It's the third Contra 3.
No
yeah,
way.
It's the third title in the series. I know it's surprising, but I'm great at pointing out the obvious. And it's in the vein of Contra. It's a sort of side-scrolling, most of the time, run and gun, shoot stuff and don't get hit by bullets game. This one, storyline is set in the future, I think 2600 sometime, and you're fighting an alien invasion of Earth and hating every moment of it because you die a lot unless you're good at games, and I'm not.
But thankfully you have multiple lives, like in most games.
Exactly.
So it's not just permadeath right away. So, I mean...
Anything noteworthy that like stuck out to you guys in terms of what made the game unique?
That it was a run and gun, but it wasn't just it wasn't only a side-scrolling adventure, because in this game there were at least one or two other kind of level types.
Yeah, they did those really cool top-down levels. I think it was like level 2 and 5 or something that sort of did a faux 3D perspective. That was them taking advantage of some new technology that the Super Nintendo had. That was kind of enjoyable.
Yeah, it was very cool. So Jay, why did you choose this particular game? I mean, I know it's on your list, but like, do you have history with this? I know, I think I've seen you at least play through one of the other Contras. Haven't you done that already?
Yep. I played through the first Contra.
Does this like series or does this game hold like a special place in your heart? What led you to say, hey, let's do Contra 3 this week for the podcast?
Yeah, Contra does have a special place kind of in my heart. It was the original Contra on the NES. I spent many a Saturday as a kid playing that game to the point where, even though I haven't played it in like 5 or 10 years, when I actually played it for my series, I kind of remembered the Contra Code. It's sort of like burned in the back of my head. I don't know if you guys know what the Contra Code is.
Yeah, like is it left, right, up, down, down? No.
It's up, down, left, right, B-A, start.
Yeah.
And then you get 30 lives.
Right.
And yeah, that was a game that I just played a lot as a kid. And I played the sequel, which was Super C, which I plan on playing for my channel at some point. But Contra 3 was one of the first Super Nintendo games that I played. It was something that my dad rented for us on the weekend because we were Contra fans, and we were like, oh, a new Contra. And I remember loading it into the Super Nintendo and trying it for the first time, and I was just blown away because it basically took the original Contras and like ramped them up to 11. Like in the original Contras, you start with just a normal rifle, and you have to, earn a machine gun by finding a power-up. Contra 3 is like, no, forget about that. You start with a machine gun.
Right.
I think the first thing you do is you explode a sports car that's in your way, and then you just go on to just gunning down everything on the screen. I remember playing that one sort of to no end. And it was... Contra, I think, is a game that's it stands out as a really fun two-player game because you play at the same time. And I don't know if any of you guys played two players when you did play it, but the game is really fun single player, but when you play two-player, it adds this simultaneous co-op and competitive aspect to it. Because co-op because you're helping each other, but competitive because you can do things like scroll the screen too far forward and kill your buddy, and so you're kind of constantly yelling at each other to not go too fast and keep up and stuff. And you can steal lives if you run out of lives. You can start taking lives from the other guy and stuff.
Yes.
So
that becomes problematic though when you're me. Because I have some fond memories of playing original Contra, not as a kid, but later as a retro game with my roommate in school. And I was that guy that he had to be good, and I was terrible, and I couldn't beat the game without him.
Like that feature, quote unquote, is in some of those other like two-player split-screen games. And being the older brother in my household growing up, I was always the one that had the lives taken from him. So I don't appreciate that particular mechanic, but I understand why it's there.
I'm wondering, in multiplayer, do your high scores remain separate, or is it one high score? Because that would be cool too, the kind of competitive aspect of getting the high score in the level.
I think they are separate.
Yeah, I
think they're separate. If I remember how the loading screen looked, I believe it shows them being separate.
Well, that's a very relevant multiplayer then. It's very cool.
This week we probably all played solo because we don't have any friends.
Right.
But I mean, it's still a great game nonetheless. Now, you said, Jay, that the Konami Code, I think you were referencing on the original Contra how that gives you additional lives, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so knowing that this was a Konami game, the first thing that I did as soon as the game loaded was input the Konami Code to no avail.
You had no luck.
There's no function here. What's up with that?
They actually had it in the original Japanese version, and for some reason when they made this one, they took it out.
Are you serious?
Uh-huh.
America. All right, so this game is difficult. Like, it's one-hit kills, so it's not like you've got a life bar, which I think a lot of us are just familiar with games nowadays. Like, games have gotten progressively a lot easier, through time for the most part. Yeah. But with some of these earlier games, such as Contra 3, you don't have a life bar. So one bullet hits you, you're dead. And thankfully, you've got a certain amount of lives, but you don't have a life bar. So anytime that you get hit, you're dead. So that obviously ramps up the difficulty tenfold.
Yeah, I was taken back to our Sunset Riders week a little bit with the way you have to dodge, your bullets and all the projectiles because, one hit and you're done.
So, Sunset Riders felt even more forgiving, though, to me.
Really? Because I was actually about to say I like how in this game the continue system, or like the way your lives work, when you die you don't have to start over. You just get back up, and it's.
I mean, more in terms of gameplay, but yes. Okay, I agree.
Because usually that's a complaint of mine. I don't like it to be too easy, but it balanced out in this game. It didn't feel too easy because of that, because it was still a really hard game. But I do like that where they did make you start over. You just kind of get to spend a life and then get back up.
I agree with that. That's one thing. Contra is known to be a hard game. And actually, I think the original Contra was in the arcades before it was on the NES. And I know some people who used to play it in the arcade, and they said it was just a quarter stealer because you died so easily.
Right.
But it's never bothered me because they do start you where you die. So it emphasizes you have to be good at it, but it is sort of a little forgiving in that.
A thing that Contra 3 had that I believe that, and it's been so long since I played Contra, and I might have even played Super C back in the day, but I think Contra 3 introduces a few things that are new and unique, such as the top-down view stages, which we've already mentioned, but also there are stages where you're flying the whole time. There's helicopters or missiles, and you're having to latch onto those, which so difficult, and especially during that boss fight. But and then there's some other vehicles, you can get in a tank during one stage, and then you've got various upgrades, which I know they had upgrades in the previous games, but this one just showers you with upgrades.
And the nice thing is too, you get to do the dual gun thing, because choosing which upgrades in the past game was always sort of I don't know which one I want,
right?
And here you can sport two different weapons and switch back and forth, and that was a great change,
which I didn't even know was possible until halfway through the game when I did it on accident.
Nice.
Nolan, you discovered that, right?
No. This is news to me, actually.
He was silent, so I was waiting for that. Yeah, so you can choose between two different weapons, and if you want to pick up another upgrade, you can switch to your standard gun, and then it will replace. When you get that upgrade, it will replace your standard gun. So then you can switch between two of the upgraded guns. Now,
and when you die, you only lose the gun that you're carrying. Yeah. So it can kind of give you a backup gun as well, which is great.
Time for a second playthrough then.
Yeah. Now I hope that y'all gathered this, because I didn't find this until about 3/4 of the way through the game. But there is actually a button combination that you can do that shoots both guns at the same time while you flip through the air.
Nope. Didn't know that either.
Kenny?
I knew it existed, but I did just because
you just didn't do it.
No. As I play, I'm reading about these games and those kind of things. I never used it in the game ever because I'm bad at games.
Jay, were you familiar with that?
I was familiar with it, but it's something that I never do in the game because it's a bit risky. If you get killed while you're doing it, you lose both guns. So it lets you fire both, but you know.
That goes back to like the whole balance feature of like the difficulty. I think that's appropriate. If it's going to be really OP, then there's some risk involved. I like that.
Definitely. And see, I didn't use it much because you can't move forward and you can't aim. But when I was overwhelmed and there were too many enemies on the screen, you better believe that I just pressed the button combination and just does a continual flip in the air while shooting bullets everywhere.
You weren't using your I wish this was me playing Colossus in X-Men bomb move when you got overwhelmed? Because that's the go-to there.
I actually
followed
that.
Just you, Kenny.
No, I was constantly out of bombs because I saved them for like bosses or something difficult. I didn't use them on little minions.
I always save the bombs, but then I would forget to use them, and then sometimes at some point in the level I'll die, and all the bombs I've saved up are just gone.
Yeah.
I don't know if that happened to you guys.
Yeah, no, I'm a hoarder, and so I would, like I just said, save it to the end boss fight, but, I mean, by the time
in real life, though, actually, too. He's surrounded by newspapers right now.
Well, and bombs.
And bombs.
Just kidding, NSA.
Because they're listening to this. Speaking of weapon upgrades, what are each of your favorite upgrade?
Right. In the original Contras, I think everyone loved the spread gun. The spread gun was the gun to have.
Sure.
One thing that I really liked about Contra 3 is that, in the original Contra, spread was the best gun, and all the other guns were kind of mediocre. This one, I felt like every gun was useful. My personal favorites are the homing gun. I think it might be your guys' favorites too. But also, I always liked flame. I always found flame very useful for a lot of things.
Yeah, mine was flamethrower as well. I got a lot of use out of that. The homing one was really cool too, but I've always had the flamethrower out because you can like angle your gun or whatever, but if you do it fast, it kind of like sprays it in an angle, and it was good for clearing like just ads and stuff, so it was really cool.
I liked the non-homing missile one. I felt like it was really strong damage-wise, but if I had to pick a favorite, it would be the spread gun, mostly just because nostalgia. It felt like you were playing Contra when you got to do that shotgun effect, and even the look of it like was correct.
Yeah, no, that's the same with me. The spread was by far my favorite. It made me feel most safe, although I liked having as my backup the laser gun. It was very narrow of where you could attack, and it obviously doesn't spread, but I felt like it was so powerful, and so anytime I needed to, I had a direct shot on an enemy that required multiple hits or something, I would switch to that laser gun and do massive damage to them.
I love the variety and the usefulness
good selection
of them.
of weapons.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In general, I felt like the things they added, whether new weapon options or different level design or different mechanics, driving around in a tank, driving a motorcycle, even variety of bosses and those kind of things were all really, really well done in this game. It's one more argument for my argument that almost always second and third games in a franchise are some of the best ones.
Oh, really?
I think so. Just because the first one, you sort of establish everything, and then they get to go back and improve on what's good and do new fun things.
Right, and take away what was not so good.
Right.
Yeah. So, there's 3 difficulty settings. Which one did y'all play on?
Played on normal because I always like to do. I don't like to do the easiest one, but also obviously don't want to go for the hardest, so I just did normal.
Kenny?
I did a little easy and a little normal. I don't want to feel like the game's easy, but even on easy, it's a challenging game.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But I do
really
like getting through enough of the game to feel like I can talk about it.
Sure.
So I would sort of start there, but then I kicked it up to normal to make sure my experience was authentic.
What did you do, Jay?
I was actually debating between easy and normal because when I played, I actually recorded it for my series. And I knew if I did it on easy, I'd be able to beat the game. And normal, I thought I probably could, but I hadn't played it in so many years, I wasn't so confident. But I decided ultimately to go with normal. I usually also, like Nolan, don't like to play games on too easy a setting.
Right.
I like to have a bit of challenge.
Yeah.
I was afraid y'all would make fun of me.
That's kind of where
we would have no matter what.
That's kind of where I'm landing. Like I I'm fine with easy. I don't need a challenge to still enjoy the game, but I knew that we'd probably have this discussion, so I played it on normal.
That's so funny.
But
we both had the same thought.
Here's the thing, man, because I beat the game, and when I beat the final boss, and then I grab onto the helicopter that comes and rescues me as everything's blowing up, which these games typically do, it flew me away, and as soon as I was out of that room and that place was blowing up, the final boss that I had just beat opened its eye, and it was still alive, and then it gives you some kind of dialogue, and then it starts you over on the beginning at the beginning of the game again on the next level of
on
difficulty.
hard mode.
With the same upgrades and lives that you just beat the game with. And so you have to beat the game on the hardest setting to see the true ending.
And with your score intact as well. So if you were ever trying to set like an actual high score, you would want to go start the game on easy, play it all the way through on normal, and play it all the way through on hard.
Goodness.
And beat it.
Yeah. Well,
I like that though, because then you really do feel like you've beaten the game if you've been able to do it on the worst or like the hardest difficulty. I think that's appropriate.
True, and it's not the longest game in the world, you know.
No. I was able to finish it fairly.
It's about a half-hour game, I think, if you go through it like efficiently.
Yeah.
Or if you're like me and die all the time, then it takes a lot longer than that. But it's
I didn't play it through in a half hour in like one sitting. But
okay. I was like,
Now, Jay, this is the first Contra, correct, that has those top-down stages?
Actually, Super C also had top-down stages, but those weren't 3D, so you couldn't rotate.
Okay.
So the kind of step forward for Contra 3 was that you could use the L and R buttons to kind of rotate the whole screen.
Right.
And the stages in Contra 3 are a bit more free roaming. In Super C, they were more linear. You were just sort of a top-down view going through a linear stage.
Yeah, being able to choose like where you started on those was a
yeah. I was wondering,
really cool
I was like, are we doing another game like last week that's a mashup of like an RPG and like, do I get to choose my own adventure type thing? But it wasn't that. You just get to pick where you start on that stage, and in those stages, rather than getting to the end and beating a boss, your mission is to take out each of these like little hubs of monsters. I don't know. You've got like maybe 6 different ports that you have to go to and destroy, and then once you destroy the final one, you've completed that stage. So it was a unique twist to your typical move left to right type stage, and I thought it was a good break from that kind of action to a whole different kind of action.
I've got to say,
there's a nice variety.
I'm not a fan of the top-down stages. They made me dizzy. Like, it really hurt my eyes when the camera rotates, and that's silly, but it did. It was difficult for me to, like, just even look at the screen, but I did like the boss fights. I thought those were some of the best ones in the game, for me at least. Like, the second top-down stage, I liked that boss fight.
That's a hard boss.
He is hard. The one that has, like, the eyeball in the middle and then the claw that will come out at you.
Oh, yeah.
I liked that, though.
Was that the one that also has moving platforms the whole time?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you're having to like correct with your L and R bumpers to try to
like the little sand pits that are
oh my
shifting
goodness,
you.
That was very difficult. That was very difficult. Here's my opinion on Contra 3. Any game that lags because of the amount of explosions on the screen is a good game in my book.
Right.
It's doing it right.
Like, did y'all? I mean, y'all had that, right? You had
the very first stage. It's lagging. I shoot the little burst gun, and I'm like, oh, too many sprites.
Yeah. Right. I just really appreciate that kind of. I mean, there's so much chaos that the game can't even handle it. I thought it was a fun game. Usually we kind of come to this head, and we want to read and address kind of some of the stuff that some of our viewers sent in this week concerning the game. So as always, Antonin sent us an email, and he said, I was able to easily get this game set up because of the GBA port, which was awesome in comparison to Guardian Heroes. I was up and playing using my Xbox 360 controller. In no time, the controls were super friendly. With that said, I seriously could not get through the first level.
Wow.
He said
it's a hard game.
Yeah, he said, I think I got used to modern games when you're expected to go through an area on the first try, and definitely not try 10 plus times, and that shows in the lack of a health bar as well. One hit kills were difficult to cope with, and with no margin of error, that meant that I died many times and had to come up with strategies for each separate area and even enemy. He said, obviously I did not enjoy it, and then he put a sideways face. He said, it's not really my style of game, and without a health bar, there is no leeway. So then a little frown face. But I mean, we definitely understand your sentiments. Like, it's not the easiest of games.
Yeah, it throws you right into it for sure. It's not very slow paced as far as like getting you used to the controls or the style of gameplay. It's just like, here you go. But I think that's classic Contra.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's classic Nintendo, isn't it?
Yeah,
a lot of them really broke you in gently.
So that's sort of that era, that arcade feel. You know, like here's a game, play it.
Which you like, Nolan, right? Like you don't.
I like that. Yeah. I don't need instructions.
Right.
You know, I'm okay with dying a couple times. I like that arcade style platformer. I think it's such a fun type of game.
Right. Dylan messaged us and he said, Contra 3 was very entertaining, but also very difficult. As long as I could get the homing missile, I was fine and could stay alive for more than 30 seconds.
That's like the noob tube of Contra, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It really was nice because you could not worry about what you were shooting. You could like just hold the button and worry about just dodging things and staying alive.
Like if I needed a breather, I would just stand still and hold that missile button, and it would take care of everybody on the stage. You know, while I stood there.
I would hit pause if I needed a breather, but that's just me.
Yeah. Well, I don't use pause. I like playing the game, Kenny.
Are we gonna give thumbs up on how we think it aged?
Yeah, I guess. How about, do we want to do that with our New Game Plus status, or do we want to make that separate?
Oh yeah, sure.
I say, okay,
we can roll that all into one.
Kind of explain that for our viewers, and then for Jay, who might not be as familiar.
As a way of kind of boiling down our thoughts on a game, we each sort of give a game either a sort of affirmative thumbs up or a thumbs down. We call that our New Game Plus seal of approval, a New Game Plus status, if you will. And it's just simply saying that this is a game that, even though it's an old game, we would recommend that it's worth people replaying, basically.
Yeah, so it's
for whatever reason.
It's not. It's not did we enjoy it or not necessarily.
Right.
It's do we think that there is replay value that the majority of people would really enjoy going back to and playing at this day and age.
Does this game merit looking back and playing for whatever reason? And sometimes we all agree, sometimes we disagree. But it's sort of our way of summing up whether an old game is worth becoming a new game again for someone who hasn't played it. And so why don't you guys jump in, share your thoughts? Does it get the New Game Plus for you?
Yeah, I'd love to hear the Retro Master Gaming Jay's opinion first, actually.
So, regarding Contra, it is a hard game. All Contras have always been this way. I think, though, Contra 3 is the cream of the crop, in my opinion, in terms of playability. So while I can totally understand some people being put off by its difficulty, I still believe that it is actually a fun game. Especially, you know, if you and a friend are just sitting around on a Saturday afternoon with nothing to do, it is a great game to load up 2-player and struggle through it together. I think it's a lot of fun. Because you need a lot of your friend covering your back and stuff if you've never played this game. So I think I personally would give it a thumbs up myself. I think it is still definitely playable and enjoyable.
Yeah, awesome. Kenny, you want to do it?
Sure. I'm
in between. We know you don't.
No,
you haven't decided.
I know. I'm an indecisive person. No, but I think that same argument is the most important one for me, though in my case, I've got to err just on the other side of conclusion. This was a great game, polished, looked great. It was well designed. They added some great features. It aged very well. It picks up as an old game and is fun. And so I would say this was a really, really good game because it is just so difficult that I think a lot of people will be like, oh, this game is fun, and then end up bashing their head or, throwing their monitor out a window or something. I would say this was not going to get the New Game Plus from me, just because audience, I think, is a little more limited.
All right, Wicked Witch. Nolan, what's your opinion?
So Contra 3 for me definitely gets the New Game Plus. And I'm going to call it a classic. And I don't call a lot of games classics because I think that should be reserved for games that really deserve it. And I don't think there's a ton of like classics in my book. I think that Contra 3 is like the Super Nintendo incarnate. Like, it's such a perfect platforming game, and I feel like indie developers, myself, if I was to make a game, I would strive to make it somewhat like Contra, but I don't know if anyone will because I think it's such a well put together game, platforming game and shooter. It has its flaws here and there, but mostly it was just me being picky. One of mine was that on some of the like machinery enemies that you could destroy, like the turrets, there was a lack of hit confirmation, like the flash that happens when you shoot an enemy, letting you know that they're damaged. So like some of them were missing that, but you know, it's just small stuff like that. But for me, I would recommend this to our viewers despite the difficulty because, you know, it's something that you can get over because it's fun enough to keep you playing.
I easily and definitely give it my New Game Plus status. It's an old game, and old games for the most part are more difficult than new games. I feel like they've just significantly dumbed down video games throughout the years so that people today could just sit there without their minds engaged, drooling on themselves, eating a bag of potato chips and play a video game and enjoy it. And back then it took skill and it took regularly practicing a stage to be able to beat it and to be able to beat it with excellence. And so I respect that, and I think many people can understand that. And so I think this game would be one that the majority of people would love to play, but it's an easy game to pick up. It's a difficult game to learn, but if you put in the effort, you're gonna have fun with this game. It's a pretty game, and it's an exciting game that I do give my New Game Plus status of approval. At the end of each of our episodes, we select our next game that we're going to play, and we've got a thing that we call the Retro Master List. It's just a compilation of the games that we've suggested and that other of our viewers have sent in to us. We had a lot even come in this week that are now on the list, and you can find that link on our social media, on our website, and you can go and look at it and see if there's a game that is not there that you would like to add. It's incomplete. We'd love to add some new games to that.
Dustin, because our list is a little incomplete and because Gaming Jay is familiar with at least 60 of his 1001 games that he's working on, I wonder if there's a game he would suggest for us to play that we could add to the list. Something that is at least 15 years old, but in the 60 games that you've played was something that is worth talking about or experiencing.
Beautiful idea, Kenny.
That
Jay?
is a good idea.
Off the top of your head, right? No pressure.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm actually frantically pulling up my list of games here. That I've played.
No, just keep talking and we won't even know that. Be like,
Yeah, I shouldn't admit it, right? Let me see. Hold on.
No, you're good.
We can even go through the process of picking our next game, let the randomizer run, and you can look and think about it for a second, and then we'll get your thoughts and add it in for next week.
That's what we'll do. All right, so we've got our games in the randomizer. This is the time in the episode where I click the randomize button.
And where I panic a little bit.
Kenny always panics and talks over me.
I know.
At the same time. And then we will get our game that we're going to be playing for the next 7 days. The game that we will be playing for the next 7 days is a PlayStation original.
Is it Monster Rancher?
Called Monster Rancher 2.
We got Monster Rancher 2, yes! Dustin and I actually played this game years ago together.
In college.
College.
Kind of. We've got stories.
We'll share some of those stories next week, I'm sure.
If you can't tell, Kenny really wanted this to be on the list.
I really wanted it to be on the list because
I don't think I put it on the list. I think Dustin did.
Yeah, it was one of my favorite stories of Kenny from college.
This is a great game.
You've got a suggestion for us to put on the list for the future?
Sure, I'll give you guys a choice.
Right.
Would you like a strategy game or a more kind of action-y game?
Strategy.
Yeah,
that's my answer.
I think we'd all say strategy.
Okay.
Hey, if they're both old enough and not on the list,
let's
we'll
do both.
add them both. Yeah.
Okay. I was going to throw out, Command & Conquer, classic game. Don't know if you guys have played that one.
Real-time strategy, right? Plays a little like the original StarCraft.
Yep.
And I don't think that's on our list yet.
Nope, we'll put it there.
And I'll also throw out Zombies Ate My Neighbors.
Oh, that sounds
Super
awesome.
Nintendo.
Yeah, that's a big one. I've never played it though, and a lot of people talk about that game from time to time. So that should be fun too.
Yeah, I've heard about that game regularly. Goodness, we'll put both suggestions. We'll put both of those on there, and hopefully the randomizer will select that in the near future.
Absolutely.
Cool. Gaming Jay, where can our viewers find you? Like, how can they connect with you at the conclusion of this podcast?
The best way to find me is on YouTube. If you search for Gaming Jay, I'm one of the first ones that come up. I have a little Pac-Man ghost as my icon. You can also, if you go on Google and look for Let's Play 1001 Games, you'll find me, my series.
Yeah.
I am going to admit here that I'm very bad on social media. I have a Twitter account that you can also find called Gaming Jay 1001. But to be totally honest, I need to start getting more engaged in Twitter. If anyone does tweet at me, though, I definitely will reply to things. But I don't usually generate tweets too often myself, other than kind of putting links to videos and stuff that I'm putting up. So that's another way to find me if you want to find my videos. There's usually links to that I'll tweet. But at the moment, I'm light on the tweets. So really, YouTube is the best way to kind of find me.
Hop on YouTube, look up his channel, subscribe, and make sure you guys are checking out 1001 incoming really fun Let's Plays.
Yeah, and we will definitely tweet out and post on our social media the links to Jay's channel and Jay's Twitter and Jay's anything and everything we can find about him. We are just huge fans of this guy, and I mean, you've listened today and you've seen that he's a great guy on a great mission, and man, it's been an honor having you as a part of the podcast.
Yeah, thanks so much for
big thanks for stopping in and sharing your perspective. It was great.
Yeah, it was fun. I really liked being here. I have listened to a couple of your podcasts too, and actually I quite enjoy them. It's fun just to listen to people sort of experiencing some retro games for the first time, trying them out, and just chatting about what they like, what they don't like. I don't know.
Definitely.
I think what you've got going on here is really great too. So I will be listening from time to time as well.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you. We appreciate your time today. Viewers, thank you guys for listening today. Thank you for your continued support. As always, subscribe to us if you haven't yet on iTunes or Stitcher or SoundCloud. You can follow us on any of those. It's absolutely free. And if you do that, you just kind of get immediate updates of what we're doing and where we're going, and you'll be the first one to know. Play with us, as Kenny has already mentioned. Send us in your thoughts.
Yeah, this week especially. Monster Rancher 2.
Send us in your commentary. You can email us at ngppodcast@gmail.com. You can tweet us ngppodcast, or find us on any of our sites. Next week will be episode 21, Monster Rancher 2, and we're excited about that. Until then, my name is Dustin.
I'm Kenny.
I'm Nolan.
And Gaming Jay has graciously been with us today. We will see you guys next week. This has been New Game Plus.